Doctor, thank you very much for taking the time to speak to us. So tell us firstly, how serious is the problem of overcrowding at Tembisa Hospital, and what's being done to address this ongoing issue?
I think thank you very much for having me in. Let's rather put the matter in context rather than actually making it a blanket overcrowding, because it actually may lose the context within which we say it. What I can say is that there is actually an increased service demand, and then Tembisa Hospital, if I give you a historical perspective, was built in 1972, serving a small catchment population. The number has since increased fourfold, if not fivefold, but the hospital size has not actually been increased proportionally. As a result, the demand far much exceeds the capacity of the hospital to carry. Be that as it may, there are various measures that we are applying within the hospital to circumvent extreme overcrowding like we saw in the previous year. So when you actually say they sleep on the floor, it's actually not candid, but will suffice to say the service demand continues to be high.
Doctor, we have received, as we did last year, photographs from patients who have recently been admitted to the hospital of numerous women having to sleep on the floor. So let's, however, address also the broader issue. We do know that given the context of COVID-19, the pandemic and increased demand has exacerbated an already existing problem that you have contextualized for us, and thank you very much for that context. What are the extended challenges faced by the hospital due to the COVID-19 pandemic?
Well, the extreme challenge that we face as a hospital over and above the service demand is purely that we had to actually reorientate service provision within the hospital. We had to actually change certain wards from being primarily for particular disciplines to actually be able to actually accommodate more actually COVID patients or COVID suspect patients. As a result, the hospital has got no less than 4 wards which are dedicated to COVID, and as well as actually 2 tents. Be that as it may, despite the surge in COVID, the hospital experienced no less service demand from the population. People continue to be sick through various ailments, and it was our obligation as actually through the Health Act, Section 27, that whoever seeks healthcare service must actually be accorded that service. And as a result, we duly obliged. And as that may be, as more people come against the limited capacity that you have, you find yourself in an ethical dilemma. Who should you remove away from the bed and who you should not? And we do not have any regional hospital in the vicinity where we can actually down-refer some of the patients who are mild. We actually accommodate the patients so that we could actually be able to oversee them. Some of them we see them overnight. Some of them we actually have to wait for them because they are actually in a very, very serious condition. In the particular that ward that you are actually talking about, in this morning we had actually opened with 60 patients. And that's actually a 50-bedded ward. It is actually naturally a 44-bedded ward, but we had to squeeze in 6 more beds so that we could accommodate more women. But this morning we opened with 60. By the time I left the hospital at around 4 o'clock, we were at 54. But right now, I can tell you we are actually sitting back at 60. So this shows how much the hospital is actually pressurized with regard to the service demand. And for the record, we deliver the second highest number of actually babies in the country after Chris Anibara, Gwanat. But we do not have the infrastructural capacity that is actually feasible to hold such actually a requirement or a demand.
Given that this is the only hospital able to service the area, have you discussed your needs with the provincial department?
It has been actually a very regular discussion, and unfortunately sometimes you do feel for your principals, because just prior to the advent of COVID, there was actually advanced discussion with regard to actually building a mother and child block at a specific area in the hospital where tenders were supposed to go out, and the building has actually, the tender process had to commence. But unfortunately, the country and the hospital within the country found themselves bedeviled with actually this service demand by COVID. And as a result, we're actually forced to actually put a shelf on that actually provision so that we could actually deal with the pandemic as it was actually now engulfing all service provisions within the hospital. Yes, we have actually discussed continuously. We have discussed the staff needs continuously, and we continue to discuss even currently. So the discussions are not closed, and we have got evidence to that effect to show that we have been engaging with them on a regular basis. I can say it from the previous HOD, Dr. Bani Silivano, up to Dr. Kinoshi, up to Dr. Prof. Mukululi, up to the current acting HOD. We are busy actually discussing with them with regard to the challenges that the hospital is facing due to each specific location and the specific service demand that it's actually faced with.
Dr. Mokhaladi, before we let you go, and in short, if you could, can you confirm whether any other of the wards in the hospital have a serious bed shortage which could result in patients having to sleep on the floor?
Well, for the record, this is actually not even exclusive to Tembisa Hospital, but in the country in general and Gauteng in particular, we have got general shortage of medical beds.
We understand that, Doctor, and at this juncture, if I could just ask you to give us a specific report with regards to Tembisa Hospital at this stage, if you could, please.
Yes, I can actually say for the record, our medical beds are continuously under challenge. Many times, I mean, we have got medical beds to an extent that some of the 2 tents that we've actually previously identified for COVID are now used for exclusively for our medical patients, purely because they have outstripped the capacity within our medical wards to accommodate them. And rather than having them to overcrowd and risk the spread of COVID, even though we do not actually, they may not be symptomatic, we decided to put some of them in these tents, which are well ventilated, have air conditions, have got floors and all those things that are actually conducive to human habitation.
Well, thank you very much for your participation. That was Dr. Lekopane Mokhaladi. He's the CEO of Tembisa Hospital, speaking to us about an overcrowding situation at the hospital at the moment.